Hello everyone! Getting on with the TeruShouEnnoTana storyline, and of course my favorite interactions of Tanaka and Dashio. These two are becoming kinda a new brain rot for me. Or, well, becoming. They've been a brain rot for a while, but I actually started to think of them as a out of Polyship storyline couple, or ship. It's kind of funny. The brain worms are demanding to be fed, let's say. Anyway, we continue on with the storyline as it was suggested in the last video. The boys are going on a date, so let's see how that goes, shall we? As always, special thanks to my lovely patrons and all of you who subscribe and watch these videos, especially now in January, because the RPM is terrible. Never mind, that's not something you would have to be concerned about. You are keeping this channel alive and going, so thank you very much for that, and let's enjoy the video together. As the pile of clothes on his bed grew, Tanaka couldn't help but sigh in frustration. Not because of the clothes themselves, but rather because his brain was about to fry soon if he didn't find something suitable for the date. Or what he would like to call date, but what was more of a desperate attempt to apologize and bring him and Dashio closer than anything. Another deep sigh resonated through his chest. This was a nightmare. The whole situation was nothing but a horrid nightmare, and he could only thank himself for getting them there. Just how much did he manage to screw up in what, 2 sentences? It was a miracle Dashio even wanted to give him a chance to redeem himself instead of sending him to hell straight away, and he kept thanking God for that. He was going to make things right again. Hopefully. Come on, there has to be something suitable. He paced around the room, feeling like an awkward teenager preparing for his first date again. But this was important. He couldn't afford not to put in the effort. And not only because Chikara and Yuji would never forgive him if he drove Suguru away. He would never forgive himself either. Come on, think, damn it. This can change everything. Well, it has to change everything, at least between us. Defeated, he chose the most fancy casual clothing he had, checking himself in the mirror one last time before he rushed outside. Since Dashio had a team meeting that day, they agreed to meet up at the little cafe they went to after their furniture shopping trip, which now felt like ages ago. It was an obvious choice. Dashio already knew the place and apparently liked the desserts too. He just hoped the sweets would be enough to keep Dashio at peace. His heart ached with the reminder of how tense his boyfriend was around him in the last 2 days. Not that he wondered why. Of course, he didn't mean to throw Dashio's trauma into his face or blame him for being a victim of all the certainly fucked up things his ex put him through. That would be a new low, one he would never intentionally stoop to. And yet, he did exactly that, hurting Dashio in the process in the worst possible way, and sending him down a terror spiral. He would gladly bash his head into the nearest wall if it helped to solve anything. Good intentions and all that stuff, and where it got us. He shook his head and sped up, his heartbeat picking up speed too the closer he got to the cafe, only to halt abruptly for a beat when he spotted Dashio waiting in front of the door. He hadn't seen what Dashio chose to wear until now, since Dashio left before he woke up. But seeing him huddled in the long beige coat and a dark green scarf took Tanaka's breath away. He looks so damn good in that coat. Returning the hesitant wave, he smiled and trotted the rest of the way, equal part excited and nervous. Are you waiting for long? No, not at all. I arrived about 5 minutes ago. Tanaka bit the inside of his cheek, noting how Dasha avoided looking him in the eyes, despite his posture not screaming fear like he had seen so many times before. He was cold for sure, judging by the little shaky exhales he let out and his hands stuck deep into the coat's pockets, but at least he didn't seem frightened. At least some good news. Okay, well, let's go inside before you freeze here. He held the door open for Dasha, earning a little grateful nod, and then followed him to the same table they sat at before. Acting on instinct, he took the coat from him to hang aside, and then pushed the menu towards him, his mind preoccupied with trying to think of how to convey his apology. The last thing he wanted was to add salt to the injury by saying something stupid again. What are you getting? The soft, almost shy voice snapped him back into reality. He quickly glanced towards the counter with desserts, mentally cursing his indecisiveness when he spotted the numerous options. Not sure. Cheesecake, maybe. Or the shortcake, that looks good too. Have you chosen already? I'll go order. Then, can you get me red velvet? And tea? Sure thing. He sprang up and headed to the counter, ordering the cakes and a jasmine tea with 2 packets of honey. They were almost alone in the cafe, except for one couple sitting on the other side and one guy in the opposite corner from them, for which Tanaka was grateful. However, no matter how peaceful the atmosphere was, he couldn't help but glance to their table occasionally to make sure nothing and no one was bothering his boyfriend. It hurt to see Dasha fidgeting so much, constantly tugging on the sleeve of his sweater and pressing his lips together while his eyes stayed buried into the table. I wonder if the scars still itch. He paused at that thought. He hadn't mentioned or asked about the scars since the fateful Saturday, worried he might throw Dasha into another downward spiral if he did. Yet, despite them now being covered by perhaps more layers of fabric than ever before, the sight was still in front of his eyes, twisting the invisible knife in his guts. Despite looking healed, Tanaka had no doubts Dasha had to feel them occasionally. Perhaps not physically, but the mental pain had to be maybe even worse. I'm so sorry, dear. Even more dedicated to making things work between them, he carefully carried the order back to the table, not missing the surprise flashing across Dasha's face when he put the tea down in front of him. You remember? Your favorite? Of course. I wouldn't be worth much as a boyfriend if I didn't remember my partner's favorite things. His words seemed to have the exact opposite effect to what he hoped for, as Dasha's shoulders visibly slumped, his fingers curling convulsively around the cup's handle. I see. For a while, neither of them said anything, tension gathering around them with the silence. Tanaka's mind raced to come up with something to start the conversation with, but seeing Dasha so cheerless took most of the wind from his sails. Think, damn it. This is all your fault, so don't you dare to let it end like this. Suguru, I wanted to... Do you want me here? Tanaka froze, similarly to his thoughts, taken aback by the question. Apparently feeling his confusion, Dasha finally met his gaze, the look in his eyes sending another jab of pain through Tanaka's chest. Do you want me here? In the relationship, I mean. Huh? Suguru, where's this coming from? Surely Suguru didn't think he would keep him around if he didn't like him, right? Right? Dasha looked away again, the tension in his shoulders confirming Tanaka's worries. I know you weren't thrilled when I appeared. I threw off your balance and invaded your personal space, and now you have to walk around me on eggshells without getting anything in return. He let out a shaky sigh. Who would want a broken toy? The whispered, broken words leaving his mouth tore Tanaka's heart apart. But along with the heartache, despair bubbled to the surface. Wait, no, that's not true. I know I'm dense and stupid sometimes, and that I said things I shouldn't, but I don't have a single regret about you joining us or asking you to date me too. Dasha gave him a sad smile, the sight dealing the last blow to Tanaka's already cracked heart. You don't have to be nice about it. It's better to hear it now before I overstay my welcome. Time as if stopped for Tanaka at that moment, a realization hitting him like a brick. Having the other person in a relationship like him back would lower the potential danger. However, if the sad person didn't want him around, maybe this was the reason behind Ashia's reluctance to get closer to him, or at least one of the reasons. Now that he said it, it was as clear as day, the hesitancy and worried looks in his direction suddenly making much more sense. And yet, he was completely blind to it until now. Without thinking, he reached for Suguru's hand, the only thing on his mind being to get rid of the expression on his face and never see it again. Suguru, listen, please. I admit it was a bit strange when we went from being 3 to 4, and it took me a bit to get used to having another person around, but I would never go back. I mean, yeah, we have to be careful around you, but it doesn't change anything about my feelings. You aren't a toy. You've had horrible things happen to you, and none of that was your fault. You deserve to be happy, and if I can help it, then great. I'll do everything in my power to make you smile and make sure you are safe. He squeezed Dasha's hand, perhaps to give his words additional weight, perhaps to give himself a moment to settle his thoughts after what he learned. His voice sounded strained to his ears when he continued, however. I'm glad you are with us, and I would love to keep it that way. I love you, no matter what comes with it. Dasha stayed frozen for a while. His eyes widened like two plates before they glossed over when Tanaka caressed his hand. I'm so sorry for what I said on Saturday, and for not supporting you when you needed it. I'll do better, I promise. Please forgive me if you can. Opening his mouth a few times without a single word coming out, Dasha lowered his gaze eventually, his own grip on Tanaka's hand tightening a bit. Do you mean it? That you love me? As seriously as possible. And I mean everything else I said too. I know you prefer spending time with Chika and Yuji rather than with me, but I still love having you around. It's not like that. I like being around you too, it's just... It's okay, you don't have to justify it to me. Whatever your reason, it's valid, and I respect that. But I want you to know that I'm here for you whenever you need help. That finally seemed to calm Dasha down a bit. He no longer looked like he was going to jump out of his skin any moment, and the tears dried on their own before they could fall, which Tanaka welcomed with open arms. The tension disappeared from the air, the peaceful atmosphere of the cafe pushing even the last remnants away into a dark corner. Encouraged by that, Tanaka gently pushed the plate with the cake closer to Dasha. Dig in. You could use something sweet now, right? A barely noticeable smile tucked in the corner of Dasha's mouth. You know me. What did you want to say before I interrupted you? Oh, I wanted to apologize for Saturday, but couldn't find the right words. Maybe good you interrupted me. I'm sure anything I would say would make me sound like a complete idiot. A short, soft chuckle escaped Dasha's mouth, and Tanaka's heart skipped a beat. With all the horror going on recently, he could almost forget how pretty Dasha was when he smiled. Much more pleasant silence settled between them as they both focused on their desserts and drinks. Tanaka couldn't help the need to occasionally glance up at Daisho, fondness flooding every cell of his being as he watched him enjoy the cake. Despite everything, he got incredibly lucky with meeting Daisho, and the fact he could still call him his boyfriend was a cherry on top. However, the mental notes he made before stayed in his head as a silent reminder of what he needed to work on if he wanted to prevent a situation like this from repeating. He would be damned if he caused his boyfriend more pain. Will you be okay here on your own for a while? Blinking in surprise, Dasha raised his eyes to him. The confusion soon replaced by understanding when Tanaka motioned to the bathrooms. Oh, yeah, sure. I don't think there's any danger here. He didn't sound overly convinced, more like he tried to convince himself of that, but the urge was too much for Tanaka to ignore it and stay. Still, a strange feeling settled in his guts the moment he got up from the table, urging him to rush even as he was already standing by the sink. Come on, chill. He can take care of himself for a few minutes. It did nothing to settle his unrest, though. He almost stumbled over the threshold from the rush, inwardly calling himself a paranoid idiot already when he stopped mid-step. The man previously seated in the corner was now perched next to Dasho, pretty much glued to his side and leaning into his personal space, with his hands set firmly on Dasho's thigh. Come on, I'm not asking for much. Just your number and a bit of your time. Tanaka gritted his teeth, the man's tone sending shivers down his spine. He caught Dasho's gaze, the silent, panicked plea for aid in his eyes flipping a switch inside of him. Seething, he marched towards the table and draped his arm over the stranger's shoulders. You're sitting in my spot, pal. He ignored the guy's protests and no less than lifted him from the chair to lead him away, not holding back even a bit of his strength as he squeezed the other's shoulder. He then leaned closer to his ear, a flicker of satisfaction flaring up in his chest when the creep squirmed under his grip. Touch my boyfriend like that again, and I'll rip your arm off and beat you to death with it. Fair warning. Dude, chill. We were just talking. Did I make myself clear? The guy hissed under the added pressure on his bones. Yeah, clear. Jeez, I didn't know he had a guard dog. Growling under his breath, Tanaka pushed him away, glaring holes into his back until he disappeared out of the door. Only then he returned to Dasho and reached for his hand, his chest constricting when he felt him flinch. Are you okay? Did he do anything too? No, I'm fine. He just appeared and asked for my number. I'm sorry, I told him no and that you are here, I swear. But he didn't listen and... Shh. It's okay. I'm not mad at you. Dasho shivered, perhaps instinctively leaning closer to him. I froze up when he sat down. I don't know why, but it was scary. As if my brain wanted to warn me against something, but I don't know what. Humming softly, Tanaka led him into a hug, giving him enough time and space to pull away if he needed to. But Dashio no less than slumped against his chest, clutching his shirt in his hands. It's okay now. Whoever it was, he's gone. Hopefully. He shook his head and continued to cradle Dashio in his arms, happy he could still provide at least some sense of safety to his boyfriend, despite everything that happened between them. Things were going to be alright. He could make this work. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I certainly did, because this is the story I had in mind and in my notes for probably since I started with TeruShouEnnoTana, which is surprisingly quite long already, a few months. So I was super excited that I finally got to it and finally got to the point in the story where I could use it. Yeah, I love these two. I love them. They are sweet, and as I said at the beginning, my brain worms are demanding to be fed. The Tanaka Dashio ship, even outside the Polyship. So yeah, somehow they worked quite well together. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed too. If you have any requests or ideas, the request form is linked in the video description. See you next time.